Hello friends, is your divorce finally over and now you catch yourself daydreaming about the next awesome vacation that you're going to take with your kids? Be it with your kids and your new significant other, or your kids and your extended family, or maybe just you and your kids. Maybe you guys are going to hop on a Caribbean cruise, or maybe you'll fly out to Europe to check out the sights over there. Maybe you'll jump down to South America to see what adventures await, or maybe even you'll travel out to one of those deserted islands in the Southwest Pacific to see those beaches and those long sunsets. Well, before you do all that, please make sure to check out your parenting plans and make sure that you accounted for travel with the children and what to do about their passports. Because if you didn't and your ex-spouse doesn't agree with the travel, you ain't going! You ain't going! That's right. So today we're going to cover what to do about the travel provisions and the children's passports in a divorce. Welcome back to the Divorce Broadcast. My name is Manny Segarra, coming to you from Miami, Florida. Alright, so as I mentioned at the outset, today we're going to discuss the minor children traveling and what to do about their passports during a divorce. So one of the first things that we'll do is that we will provide a link to the U.S. State Department website regarding what qualifications or what's necessary for minor children to get a passport. As you will see, the U.S. State Department requires that both parents consent if a minor child under the age of 16 is going to obtain a passport. This is really important, and the premise behind this requirement is so that neither parent attempts to abduct or remove the children and flee to a different country during a divorce or some sort of custody dispute. So the U.S. Department of State is aware of all this and puts it very clearly in their rules and regulations. Also, there are some safeguards that have been put into place by the U.S. State Department. Specifically, if one of the parents is fearful that the other parent may try to apply for a passport for the minor children without them knowing, they can sign up for a program called the Children's Passport Issuance Alert Program. That program is run by the U.S. State Department, and the parent who enrolls in that program will be alerted or notified if anyone tries to apply for a passport for the children that they register. So that's a great safeguard that has been put in place by the U.S. State Department. Now let's discuss some of the preliminary issues that arise when it has to do with the children traveling or their passports. The first decision that usually has to be made is whether or not they're going to have a passport to begin with. The great majority of parents are cool with the children having a valid United States passport. Some of the children even qualify for dual citizenship, so that's really awesome when the children can have both. However, some parents don't want the children to have passports, so that's something that they have to try to work out and negotiate. Assuming they can work that out, the next issue that arises is who's going to hold on to the passports. Oftentimes the parents are very distrustful of each other, so they may fight or argue about who's going to hold on to the passports. Maybe they'll decide to rotate the passport on a yearly basis, or if there's multiple kids, maybe one parent will hold on to some of the children's passports and the other will hold on to the other children's passports. So that's just the first step. Up next, we got to talk about travel itineraries. That's right, the traveling parent or the parent who's going on vacation has to have good communication with the non-traveling parent. This often means that they have to provide a detailed itinerary of where they're traveling. This itinerary may include the dates of travel, how they are traveling, the manner in which they're traveling, where they're going to stay, and the different destinations that they are, and how to contact that parent and the children during that vacation or during that travel. It's important to also provide emergency contact information for the child. In addition to this, there should be some sort of schedule worked out for communication between the parent who is not traveling and the child, taking into account any different time zones. So all of this planning and communication is very important. A great tip and another great resource from the U.S. State Department is to register any trip, especially the international travel, with the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. The acronym is STEP. This program is great because the U.S. State Department gives real real-time updates on any issues about health, weather, and safety, and it texts that information to any of the citizens who are traveling abroad. It also helps the U.S. Embassy contact any travelers in the event of any type of emergency, like a natural disaster, any type of unrest, or a family emergency. So I encourage any parent who's traveling with their children, especially internationally, to register with the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. We're going to put a link to that program below. So let's talk a little bit about the different travel criteria if it is travel within the particular state. So I live in the state of Florida. If the travel of a parent in the state of Florida is within the state, let's say they want to go to Disney World to see Mickey Mouse, or they want to take a trip to the Keys, what happens in that case is usually the traveling parent simply has to give 24 to 48 hours notice, because it is travel within the particular state and it's not going very far. And they would have to give a detailed travel itinerary of where they're staying and how to contact the child in the case of an emergency. So travel within the state is a lot easier, obviously. Now let's talk about travel within the United States, but outside of the state of residence of a child. Let's say in the example that I just gave, the traveling parent wants to travel outside the state of Florida within the United States, so like California or New York or Colorado or Hawaii or Alaska, something like that. Usually travel within the United States is also less formal. Normally the parenting plan would request anywhere from 2 to 7 days notice of that travel, and again a detailed itinerary of the dates of travel, where how the child's going to get there, and emergency contact. So travel within the United States is a little bit less formal than the next one that we're going to talk about. Now we're going to talk about the one that causes a little bit more conflict and disagreement between parties, and that's travel outside of the United States and territories. Remember, we're not talking about the U.S. territories like Puerto Rico, St. Thomas, or the U.S. Virgin Islands, or maybe Guam, or the Northern Mariana Islands, and things like that. We're talking about out of the United States. Oftentimes, the agreement is more formal when it comes to a parent traveling with a minor child out of the United States. And a lot of times, the notice requirement is more. It's like 30 days. It could be 60 days to allow for the other parent to either raise an objection or either party to file an appropriate motion in court. The dispute over the passport usually arises when the parties don't get along. If the parties have been bickering and fighting and litigating throughout the proceedings, the chances are the use of the passport and travel outside of the country is also going to be an issue. It may also be an issue because one of the parties doesn't like who the other party is traveling with. Maybe they're traveling with their new significant other. Maybe they're going on a really nice vacation and that parent's a little bit salty. Or maybe the parent who is objecting has a genuine objection that the country where the traveling parent is going is dangerous, either because of civil unrest, maybe there's some sort of war or some sort of sanctions going on with that country. So sometimes it is actually a legitimate dispute as well. Oftentimes it is written in the parenting plans that if one of the parents unreasonably withholds consent of the use of the passport, then the other parent has to file something in court. So a lot of times a motion for the use of the passport or a motion for travel, for permission to travel, is filed by the parent who wants to travel with the children. And that is set for hearing, oftentimes on an expedited basis, so that the court can determine what it's going to do. If a court hearing results from the parents objecting to travel or wanting to travel and the other parent objects to traveling, then the parties must be prepared to go to court. So the parent who's traveling has to be prepared to explain to the court why they want to travel. Is it a vacation? Is it a family emergency? Is it something like that? That parent will also have to show the court when they provided the other parent with the detailed itinerary of travel and when that other parent objected to the travel. The parent objecting will have to give a genuine reason as to why they object to the travel. And when I say genuine, I mean it. They can't just say, oh, because I don't like the new boyfriend or girlfriend. That's not legitimate. Also, any messages back and forth between the parties will probably be presented in court. So they better be behaving themselves in the way that they communicate with each other. If the parties have to go to court and there's a court hearing on the issue of whether or not the court will allow the minor child to travel travel outside of the country, it is almost always the case that one of the parties will try to admit into evidence the U.S. State Department travel advisories. We're going to attach a link to this particular page. Please note that the U.S. State Department travel advisories list the level of concern that the U.S. State Department has to travel to different countries. So it breaks it down almost into like a little format. Level 1 means that the U.S. State Department tells people to exercise normal precaution. Level 2 means that the U.S. State Department tells people to exercise increased precaution. When it comes to level 3, they try to tell people to reconsider travel. And if it comes to level 4, the State Department says do not travel. So the higher level that a particular country is when a parent is requesting to travel there, that can cut against them in a court proceeding. As could the fact of a particular country where the parent wants to travel not being a signatory of the Hague Convention on the Civil Aspects of Child Abductions. This is a very important treaty that if the country is not a signatory to, I've seen a lot of times that courts will not allow children to travel to those countries. So food for thought. Ultimately, the court will eventually decide whether or not to let the children travel. It will take testimony from the parent that wants to travel and consider their evidence, listen to the objection of the parent objecting to the travel, and take a look at their evidence, take in any information about travel advisories and whether or not they're a signatory of the Hague, and make a choice. And sometimes if the travel is allowed, the court will implement further safeguards. Like sometimes I've seen a security detail have to be implemented, or bond posted, or extra contact between the traveling parent and the parent who's not traveling. And if the request to travel gets rejected, then that parent won't be able to go. What I will say is that it is always better for the parties to try to discuss this and negotiate and work it out than roll the die and go to court, because it's so unpredictable what a court's going to do, and the world is ever changing and evolving. So before we sign off, we would love to hear some comments about some of the vacations or trips that you would love to take with the kiddos and what that country is currently listed as with the U.S. State Department trip advisories. I know that when I looked at the list, I was pretty surprised that some of our greatest allies are listed on that trip advisory. So check it out. It's pretty interesting. All right, so that is a wrap on the issue of minor children traveling as well as their passports. If you know anyone that may find this information useful, have them look us up at www.segarralawfirm.com. We have offices in Miami and Orlando, Florida. Se habla español. Do us a favor and like this video, subscribe to the Divorce Broadcast, and we will talk to you soon.